Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of AFL Weekly. As usual, it wouldn't be the same unless we had some technical issues, but that's fine. You know, we'll just soldier along. And, of course, hosting the show tonight is Nikki and Scorpus. Scorpus, how are you going? Hello, Scorpus. And now I can't hear you, Scorpus.
You can hear me?
Now I
Well,
can
Phoenix
hear
is sounding like a robot to me, so this ought to prove interesting.
you. This is going to be a good night. I can hear you now, mate. Go for your life.
Okay. Yeah, you're cutting in and out there, so hopefully someone will listen to the feed and tell us what is the situation here. But I'm just going to assume that we're okay until someone tells me otherwise and start with the Wednesday show. Once again, we'll be going through a little bit of news, a little bit of AFLX just to please Gillen, and then going to the actual real deal of the week, which is the AFLW. How you doing, Nikki?
I'm going quite well.
Oh, that's good to hear. I can at least hear you. That's going well. All right, I guess let's get into the news.
Yeah, so we'll start off with the AFLX, and then there's a little bit of AFLW news, and then that'll lead into a little recap of a game. So, of course, it kicks off tomorrow night at Hindmarsh Stadium from 6 o'clock, I do believe. Our first game's 6, something like that.
Yep, very specific with the times.
Oh, yeah, there we go. I read my emails today. So we've had our squad named. So should we just run through the names in case people aren't aware?
Yeah, go through the bottom of our list that's in this squad.
I wouldn't say all of them are the bottom of our list, but so we've got Gallucci, Kelly, Hampton, Edwards, yay! Andy Otten, who's been named as the captain, Cheney, Ellis Yeoman, Wilson, Himmelberg, which I think will be interesting to see Elliot out there, Signorello, Hunter, Deere, Dode, Davis, Keith, O'Brien, Murphy, and Benjamin. So a lot of that is our SANFL side, to be fair.
Yes.
But you're only as good as your team is only as good as your second stringer. So we expect to actually see something decent from them.
Yeah, I think you look across this squad and you think that 75+% of these players won't play too much AFL in the upcoming. Gallucci, I would be hoping would be in our AFL team along with Kelly, and the potential for players like Otten, Hampton, Dode, and Cheney, maybe Ellis Yeoman, maybe these sort of players. We have definitely gone in with a full-blown development squad into this game, not given too many shits about AFLX, I wouldn't have thought, with this sort of squad.
No matter what we're saying, we're not really. I mean, it's perfect. This is what I anticipated the squad to actually be, was to be most of those players who were in the SANFL team, who are trying to put their best foot forward to get into the main team, because you never know what opportunities are going to come your way. So this gives them a good chance to do that before the JLT, where they'll get a bit of time, but you'd think they wouldn't get as much time as they might like. This will give an opportunity for most of them to say, hey, give me a bit extra. I've shown you something here. I
think one of the most telling things about this squad is how many defenders we've named. You look at, we've got Kelly, Otten, Cheney, Dode, Keith, potentially Deere as well, who's playing a bit of defence last season. That is pretty much all of our defenders fighting for those couple of spots, Kelly's spot as well as Lever's vacated spot. Pretty much every player fighting for those spots is in this squad. So potentially we're looking at this match to see sort of how we might approach that coming into the AFL season.
And the thing is that if we want to have a look at them, we do know that Deere and Keith can actually play up forward. So depending on what happens with Himmelberg and Davis, etc., there's some other tall options we can throw there. And you've got Otten, who can play either end.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly, I think, for the fast-paced nature of what is supposed to be the AFLX game, not that we've ever seen it before, I can't see us playing a lot of the tall players together if we were interested in winning it. Maybe one or two at either end of the ground, but Yeah, it's certainly a lot of more taller players in the squad. So I'm really not sure how we're going to line up in this match. I guess it's just a bit of a shit show.
Isn't that what we've kind of thought all along ever since it was announced? I mean, that it was a circus announcement. Everybody was calling it a circus, and then they came out with like tumblers and acrobats and stuff. And it was like, oh, really, Gillen, read the room, honey. Have you got the port social media people telling you how to do things?
Yeah, the whole announcement thing was just a complete joke. And after a lot of teams talking up how they're going to, take this really seriously and, roll out all their stars, there's pretty much no top quality players actually playing in the competition. And a lot of teams, at least half of them have gone in like we have with just pure depth pretty much.
Yeah, mostly. But this is depth that, as I said before, at some stage has to play. During the season, they have to step up. So that there is some decent quality in there. Have you actually had a look at the other squads? Because I don't really care, so I haven't.
Yeah, I have taken a brief look. I've been really interested to see which teams have been, fielding what I would class comfortably best 22 players. And you look at some team. I'll just go through a couple of them I thought was interesting. Collingwood's fielding Steele Sidebottom, Jack Crisp, Will Hoskin-Elliott, Braden Maynard, who are all players I would have thought quite comfortably in their best 22. Fremantle named Nat Fyfe until they withdrew him, but they're still playing Michael Walters. Some of their more development players there. Port Adelaide, interestingly, have named Robbie Gray, along with players like Jack Watts, obviously, who they drafted in. Jasper Pittard's been named. Geelong have named Daniel Menzel, Mitch Duncan, Tom Hawkins in their squad, so they're taking it obviously a bit more seriously. And the two teams that we do end up playing, I believe, are us, so Collingwood, and the Eagles. The Eagles have gone in pure development, so none of their star players are in their squad. But just out of those, 6 teams that are playing, obviously, a couple of them are going in a bit harder than we are.
Yeah, it was very interesting, though, from the highlights we saw earlier from the club, that Seedsman wasn't in there.
Yes, and also in the announcement for the AFLX stuff, they brought in Rory Atkins as well to do the press conference, and he's not in the team either. So, and I think even Paholke spoke a little bit about AFLX, who's also not in the team, and I think that was one of my big surprises that he's in.
He's not quick, though. That's not his forte. So AFLX isn't really his thing.
Oh, I wouldn't say a player like Andy Otten is particularly quick, or Cam Ellis. But yeah, I mean, obviously that's been a decision. Maybe it indicates he's a bit closer to AFL selection. That'd be really nice.
I actually think he might be. It was very interesting, the fact that he's been training with the midfield. He was introduced as part of the midfield group when they did the team presentation, yet Gallucci was part of the forwards group.
Yeah. Sorry, I just got a message right then. Someone's interrupting my podcasting abilities.
Always good when I leave a blank space for you. There's silence.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay. Another thing I just wanted to touch on briefly with the AFLX was, again, some of the other squads. Obviously, the teams are also playing on Friday night at, I believe it's Etihad Stadium, and then they're up in Sydney on Saturday night, I think. And it looks like, just from looking at the squads, Hawthorn's gone in with a more experienced team. St Kilda a bit more experienced as well. Essendon and Carlton going a bit more with the development squad. Sydney, again, they've named players like Dane Rampy, which surprised me a little bit. Richmond have taken all their small forwards from their premiership team in, like Butler, Castagna, those sort of players. GWS have named Tom Scully and Lockie Whitfield. So, it's an interesting mix across these squads. I wonder how much these teams are sort of looking at this as the third JLT game, because obviously last year we played 3 JLT. This year we've only got 2. And usually in one of those games it was, a lot of development players. I'd be interested to know how these coaches are actually thinking behind the scenes.
I think you're probably right in that respect, because it was the first JLT game. You saw so many of the new players playing, and obviously the AFL didn't like that. They want to push this kind of AFLX thing, so let's drop a JLT. Let's put this one in instead. That way they get around the AFLPA just going, we're playing too many games. Well, look, here's the nice short one. This is better, kind of thing. And it gets those development players out of the way so that they can actually, then they're getting some, what they consider some decent players playing the GLT, which is really, there's nothing in there for teams to win. So, I mean, yes, they still try to win because they're competitive players, but the coaching staff, that's not the full focus on what they're doing. They're trialling new things, etc. They're just having a look at players in different positions, etc.
Oh, it's really clear looking across these squads that there's not a single team here that's really going in to win this. If there were, they would obviously be naming some of their really top-end players, and not a single team really has done that. So, yeah, it's a really interesting concept from the AFL. Interesting, I mean bad, because it sounds like with their ticketing and stuff, they're doing a lot of giveaways. I hear they've reduced the ticket costs. I can't honestly see any of these games being even close to sellouts. There's just not the interest.
No, and I think, I mean, you're going to get more players, more crowds to the AFLW, particularly here, than you will, I think, to the AFLX.
Yes, I would say that's definitely true.
All right, so we'll move on to some not so fun news in the AFLW, in that we had 2 ACLs come out of the weekend, which was horrible news for those particular players. It's really quite hard, I think, on Carlton, and it's going to be interesting to see how this is going to impact the rest of their season, because they don't have Lauren Arnell. She was such a great player and a great captain last season, but Brianna Davies was a really top-notch second, and for her to do her knee now, and so they've lost their secondary captain in a way, and they've lost that real anchor point in the defence. And we've seen from the way our team plays, if you don't have those anchor points in defence, you're just so susceptible.
Yeah, it's very disappointing for them, and also, of course, the Western Bulldogs with their number 1 draft pick.
Yeah, Isabel Huntington.
Huntington?
Yep, Huntington.
Yes.
And by all accounts, she's a very great person as a player. I've seen a lot of messages of support for her from across the league, and most of that's actually talking about, you know, what an amazing person she is.
Yeah, the support for these players has been really fantastic across all sorts of social media, and players from, you know, pretty much all clubs, you know, getting behind these injured players, and it's just really unfortunate that, you know, with the mechanics of how women are physically playing the game, that they're more likely to do ACL injuries. You know, I think it's been almost a couple per week of the AFLW season so far of ACL injuries, which is just horrible for the players involved. And yeah, I really hope that, you know, there's more research into this area to hopefully sort of prevent these injuries in the coming AFLW seasons, especially because of how small the squads are.
It's not just in football. It's any sport where you're actually turning inwards. Women are 5 times more likely to do an ACL. And it's just, unfortunately, it's the physiology of the way female knees are unfortunately set up. Touch wood, I'm okay so far, but I have had teammates, we've had in the past couple of years, sometimes they've done it as soccer, you know, just at training. It's very innocuous, but there they go, they do it. We had one of our really lively players who was just such a great little club person, and she was the real life out on the field, and in the prelim final she did her knee, and it just plays on your mind as a player, and you could just see how much it affected all the Carlton players. They were in tears at the end of that game. Yeah,
it's just devastating to see these injuries for anyone, and yeah, it's unfortunate as well, considering they're so early on in the season. The season's so short, and really, it's, you know, the competition's up for grabs for any team. So to have these players not be available for, you know, the majority of the season is just terrible.
And to talk about physiology then leads on to an interesting discussion. So earlier today in our podcasters chat, there was a very vigorous debate regarding Hannah Muncie now finally being allowed to play. So she's a transgender woman. She's been playing in the ACT League. She then approached the AFL to see if she could be included in the draft, and the AFL went, and decided that no, she couldn't. They've now lifted that, so she will be able to hopefully play, she's hoping, in the VFLW for this upcoming season, and then if she puts her forward, she'll nominate for the next draft for the AFLW. Now, some people have expressed some concerns regarding that she was born as a man, but for me, I've played in the Sawful, and we actually had a transgender player. And from talking to my teammates and, chatting with other team players as well, none of us are bothered by it. They identify as a woman. They're getting some, they have the hormone treatments, which does actually change their physiology through when they're going through transition, etc. So we don't have a problem. It appears that some other parts of society.
Yeah, I think it's important to note here, I'm not an expert in this by any means, but it does seem
Me neither.
At the moment that the research does indicate that, once a transgender person goes through their, gender reassignment process, that they don't really have much of or any physical advantage over, women who are born as women, I guess, in these sort of sporting fields. At least that's what the current research is saying. I did mention in the chat a bit that, there's not a whole lot of research, not a whole lot of sample size in this sort of field, but at least that's what the research is indicating. So it seems perfectly reasonable for a player who was previously allowed to play to continue to be able to play in the state leagues. There's obviously the AFL has a different idea for the AFLW top league, competition, because they banned her from playing there. But, obviously there's still a lot of things to go to allow transgender people to play in these sort of leagues, but at least it's a positive thing for her to be able to play in the state leagues this year.
Yeah, and as I said, as a player, we've played against players who are, and honestly, football, the reason why most of us love football is that you can be any size, and there's possibly a place for you on the footy field. It's not restricted to, you just have to be this shape and that's the only thing that works to get to the highest level. We have positions, so you have a small forward, you have a fullback, you have a centre-half forward who can be kind of that mix between quite a tall, powerful one or a slimmer, quicker one. You've got ruck, and you've got the midfielders. There's a complete different range of body size, and some of the concerns people list up as, she might have a strength advantage, etc., so she might hurt the female players. It's like, well, as long as you know how to hit, you can hurt people.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, by all accounts, it does seem like, she's not at the elite level, I would, to put it sort of in a nice way. She
No.
wasn't really, going to be an immediate selection for AFLW or anything. She, from what I've read, she's quite tall and like more of a ruck size at AFLW or women's, league level. But it doesn't sound like she has, the sort of skills to be a dominant ruck in that field. So I guess there's not too many, I wouldn't expect too many people to be complaining about this too much. But, there's always people who are less tolerant of these sort of things and unfortunately will, hurl abuse and that sort of thing. It's unfortunate, but yeah.
That's the way things go. So, shall we talk about that lovely game on the weekend that had me yelling at the television a lot? Although,
yes.
To be fair, not as much as it had me yelling at the television during the Winter Olympics opening ceremony. Basil Zemplis, whoever wrote the channel, this is my rant for the day, whoever wrote their little script was so freaking disrespectful to every country, I turned it off in disgust.
Yeah, well, Basil Zemplis is well known to be the worst commentator of all time. So it isn't super surprising.
But they actually have a script written for them specifically.
Yeah,
There's somebody who goes out and does it. So every time a country would come in, he'd start talking about how good they were in tennis or something. Tennis is not a winter sport, Basil.
Yeah, he's an idiot. And obviously the script writers are no good either. And there's a bit of that in some of the other sports as well. I didn't think their commentary was particularly good. Certainly lacked some expertise, I would have thought. But enough of the Winter Olympics.
I just had to get that out there. I've been...
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Channel 7 usually stuffs stuff up, and they did there again. Unfortunately, though, we also stuffed up on Saturday.
Oh, God.
So we were playing down at Casey Fields against Melbourne. And, yeah, we got demolished. 8 goals, 8.56 to 4 goals, 0.24. Pretty large discrepancy in the scoring there. We did manage to score in more than one quarter, which was positive compared to last week, but we are sitting... at the bottom of the AFLW ladder without a win and on the worst percentage. So I'll let you talk, Nikki, first. But again, I thought we were very disappointing.
I think I was really pleased with that first quarter because we brought the intensity as we should be, because once I saw that win and that they'd won the toss, it was like, oh, God, this could be horrible. And the players all lifted and they did everything they possibly could to actually contain the scoring power of Melbourne. We know they have quite an amazing midfield. As Beck Goddard said after the game, they have the best midfield in the AFLW. They do bat very deep. And I thought, even though she did get banned for kneeing bad Angela, she did a really good job on Daisy. And she actually kept her, fairly quiet for most of the game. She was getting possessions, but she wasn't damaging with them. So that first quarter was great. We brought that pressure and I thought, right, we've got the wind. We need to use this. And then it all went away. And Melbourne got the first score and that was just, I think, devastating from then on. There were some players, I think, who really can hold their head up for that particular game. If you want to talk about bad commentators, Kate Sheehan's just as poor at recognising football and what goes on as she is, as her father is. Obviously, and it was so obvious, she never actually paid attention to how we played the game last year because she would make statements and I'm just yelling at her going, that's not how we play, dipshit. I thought putting Chelsea Randall back in the back lines actually helped. I think it would have been worse if she wasn't there. Justine Mules tried her freaking heart out the entire game. I thought that was actually one of her better games I've seen her play. Melbourne sat on Denny Van Hagen very much. They made sure we couldn't use her outside run. They had a very specific game plan to counter our strengths. And credit to them, they did that well.
Yeah, I'd agree with every point that you pulled up there. I definitely noticed Van Hagen being tagged almost completely out of the game. I think it's just, the class difference between the two midfields. There's just a lot of talent in that Melbourne side. Karen Paxman destroyed us pretty much.
I think she's actually better than Daisy Pearce.
Yeah, she was fantastic and supported very well by players like Elise O'Day. Melissa Hickey I thought was quite good.
Yeah, see, I actually put Paxman and Hickey. I think they're actually more damaging than Daisy. Daisy gets a lot of the ball, but I don't think she's as good with it as she could be.
But I think, almost the entire Melbourne team, every single player, was contributing for Melbourne. You look at, just down the entire statistic list of all their players, they've got a very good contribution at the top from their stars. It goes right the way down. We were talking last week about, those second-tier midfielders really needing to be at least in the double-digit possessions, if not more like, 12 to 14 disposal level. They had many players. I can just count them here. I think it's 9 players with 14 or more disposals. We had 2 players with 14 or more disposals, and that was Marinoff and Randall. And yeah, just that contribution from our second-tier mids. Again, players like Bevan and Riley, Segenary, Lugg, again, disappointing. All of those players. Holmes was back in the side, and McCormick, they weren't particularly effective, I didn't think. All those players just not contributing at the level that we saw from Melbourne's very even and deep midfield.
Yeah, the players who I was disappointed in was actually Ruth Wallace, because she needs to commit the body harder. There was too many times she got in the right position to tackle them, but she wasn't strong enough to complete that tackle. I think she thought the tackles were going to stick, and it just didn't happen. And the other one was, it was very obvious that Metcalf didn't want to bend down, and she didn't like contact.
Yeah, there's something up there. She wasn't definitely not as good as last year in this opening couple of games.
I do know she was running laps beforehand on the Wednesday. So they're the people who are carrying a little bit of a niggle. And I think it was enough of a niggle that kind of dented her. She got a hit later on in the game, and I think she then realised, oh, that actually didn't hurt. And she started to go in harder then. So that was actually a bit more of a little mental thing herself, that she was obviously, yeah, I'm right to go. But there was always that little thing of, oh, I don't want to bend over, and so I'll just try and tap this or that way, etc. As I said, I really like Justine Mills's game. I thought it was kind of hilarious that we didn't know that Eloise Jones had actually been off injured. I thought, why is she having such a quiet first quarter? Until quarter time, when you find out, oh yeah, she's right to go. She's been off. She's had her nose rearranged.
Well, that's why I didn't even know that.
Yeah, so she had to have she had blood, so they had to completely change her kit, and then fix her nose up before they could get her back out in the field. So that happened very early in the first quarter. So that's why we didn't cite her most of the first quarter. She was off getting her nose fixed, and she came back in, and she's still dug in, as we know that she can do. I actually really like Sarah Allen down back, even though they kept calling her Jess. I thought, considering the way the ball was coming in and what the hand she was given, I thought she actually did a really good job as a defender.
Yeah, she wasn't bad. I think she came more into the game than she did in the previous game as a defender, which was good. I thought, again, we were apart from the midfield stuff that we've already talked about, I thought we were very disappointing in the air again. We just don't seem to have the ability to cleanly take marks or to read the ball properly to get into the positions to mark it. And you can see from our stats of who actually took even just one mark in the entire game that almost half the team, or at least the bottom sort of, I think it's 8 players here out of the 21 there, didn't take a single mark. And some of those players are some of the tall players. Metcalf didn't take one, none to Allen, none to Perkins. That's not, you look at, and as a comparison, you look at Melbourne and they've got only 3 players that didn't take a mark, and they significantly outmarked us inside 50, 13-3 as well. And that was a main way that Melbourne and Brisbane as well last week were kicking some of their goals, was being able to take those marks. We were just unable to do it. I don't know, throughout the midfield or anywhere really, we just didn't seem to lack the skill. I don't really know what it is, because it didn't seem we had that much of a problem last year, but just this year our marking and aerial ability is nowhere near what it was.
I think where that comes down to partly as well is that a lot of other teams will play the shorter kick game, whereas our game plan is grab it and kick it long. And teams know that, so what they're doing is they're pressuring us. They're getting at that ball carrier very, very quickly in their face. So it's just a quick blind kick. And unfortunately, they're not looking when they do it. And we have a player that's leading out to the space. What it's doing is kicking to where there's the spare defender sitting in the normal place where they should be sitting in, because law of averages, that's where they're going to try and kick to. And so therefore that's getting their marks up. Perkins, I know a few people have had a bit of a go at her, etc. She needs to be doing more. I think she needs to be looked after by the umpires a lot better.
A bit of an excuse, though. I mean,
no,
getting a bit towelled up, but at the same time,
she is
got to learn to cope.
Yes and no, because if you're being infringed against, How can you cope when you're being held down and you're being held off the ball?
Well, if they're doing it, we should do it.
Yeah, but did you actually have you watched the AFLW games with us play?
Well,
if we do it, we get pinged.
Yes, I mean, it's similar to us in the actual
AFL. Daisy Pearce blatantly throws the ball. So obvious she threw the ball. It was a two-handed throw upwards. That was not a handball. The umpire is there in the vision. Not a problem. That's fine. They get a goal out of that. Whereas that was actually in an attacking spot for us. If that was turned over and we get that, we can actually get a kick into the forward line from where that happened. And the number of times I have watched this happen to our team over and over again, it's and that's partly why I have such an issue with these umpires that they have in the AFLW. I know they're development umpires, but they shouldn't be having the development umpires because they are not consistent. And you can just see it in games that they're not consistent from one team to the next. I watched a couple of the other games as well over the weekend, and you can see that they favour one side. And it's markedly there. And I think that's part of the problem that the AFL needs to fix. They need to get their better umpires in, even if they're putting one good umpire with one of the development umpires. So they're actually learning off of a better umpire to do this.
That would be a good strategy, I think. I think, some conspiracy theorists might bring up that, maybe they're trying to engineer some outcomes favouring teams. I'm not too sure. I don't think that would be the case. But I do think that in both games we've been on the unreasonable end of the umpiring decisions. Interestingly, only 13 free kicks to 10 to Melbourne's way. It seems a bit worse than that on the day, but I guess, maybe some even ups or something. But yeah, I mean,
it doesn't matter what the number is. What actually matters is what was there, what was missed, what wasn't consistent, and where those free kicks were paid.
Yes. So, yeah, they need some more experience in there. But I think even if the umpiring was reasonable, we simply...
we dropped the ball.
Missing too many players and don't have the depth. So as much as Perkins might have been destroyed, we can't be relying solely on her to kick goals. And we especially need another taller target up there to put some pressure on their defenders or any team's defenders who were just marking it at will pretty much. We tried Jess Allen up there, but look, she was okay, I guess, but I guess we just didn't really use her too much. Hewitt, she kicked a goal from 65 meters out as a bit of a fluke, but yeah, and then we moved her into defense.
That would have been a nice pass to Perkins, except for she got the push and the free kick and it just bounced through, and it was like, hey.
Oh, at least they gave Perkins a free kick, yeah, but
they did give Perkins a free kick, and then you get the comments from the commentators. Oh, that was a bit soft. There were two hands in her back, and they pushed her under the ball.
Well, yeah, and it was a goal anyway, so they shouldn't be complaining. But yeah, I mean, Hewitt, she's okay, I guess, but I haven't been super impressed with her as a taller target, to be honest.
So you'll be very pleased to hear I wandered on down to Noarlunga on Sunday and got a sunburn sitting in the shade entirely. Because the cars on the outside, because the cars all park on the outside, you can get the reflection off that. I came home and realised, oh shit, I got sunburn. So there was a triple header of the SANFL women's. I went down to watch because my teammates were playing in two of the games. And one of my teammates was playing in a forward line with a certain Rachel Killian, who played the entire game for Westies at centre-half forward. She is an absolute class above any of those others. She got hammered pillar to post in it, but if she's pulled up all right, I think she's straight in just on the performance that she gave watching in the SANFL game on the weekend. She kicked one goal. She probably should have kicked two. She was instrumental in a couple of Westie's other goals. Did what we saw of her last year, which while she might not be kicking the goal, she's creating a lot of that pressure, that turnover. She's such a great and fierce tackler. And I think that's what's been missing a bit out of our forward line, as well as she's tall and she reads the ball really well and is a good grab.
Yeah, I mean, I was really disappointed to hear that she probably wasn't going to be playing against Melbourne, so good to hear that she was back in the in the state league. It's actually, I didn't really know what happened to the players that weren't playing in our AFLW team, but I guess they get distributed out to the state league teams. Is that the case?
Yeah, well, some have come from them. So Rachel has actually been a West Adelaide player because
Okay.
West Adelaide have had a player. They've had a team in the Sorful for quite a number of years. So that we drafted her from West Adelaide. So her and Sophie Armistead were playing for West Adelaide. And then in the game that happened in the middle, which was Glenelg versus Sturt, which was the two bottom teams playing off against each other. But Brianna Walling, who's a rookie, she played in that game. And she was the only reason Glenelg were doing well. She kicked 2 goals in 2 minutes. But that was a pretty damn good goals. All you had to do was try and stop her. And that was the only way to stop Glenelg scoring, because you could tell that she's better than a lot of the rest of that team. But Armistead, she did her normal things in the midfield, got a lot of, I looked at the possessions later on and went, oh, there's actually a bit more than what I expected once I figured out who she was. Oh, yeah, it's Sophie. But, yeah, I think Killian will definitely come straight in. And just like Hewitt, I thought she played better in defence. When we put her back there, I think she felt a lot more comfortable in defence than she did up forward.
I wasn't sold on her in defence, but can't say I was looking too closely after sort of that half-time when we were getting just trounced all over the park. So I think that's when they put her back in.
It was hard to watch.
Yeah, so I think it's probably time to talk a little bit about that upcoming game. So round 3, we are back in Adelaide. So this will be the Saturday game. There's no Friday game this week. Obviously, the AFL thinks that people will be watching the AFLX competition, but I doubt it. So this is, of course, Norwood Oval.
I could find some other things to watch on Netflix.
Yeah, that's right. So I think a lot of people will be doing some Netflix. But on Saturday...
Oh, no, Black Panther. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, that comes out. That should be good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to see that. But anyway, it's not a podcast about Marvel films. We're talking about Saturday at 2:05 p.m.
Your time.
Yeah, it's weird that they listed like that on the site. So 1:35 for people actually who can attend. So we're playing the Western Bulldogs. They're currently second on the ladder, having won both of their games. Decent percentage as well at 174. I've seen a little bit of their games. They've been quite good. As far as our players are concerned, Cramey won't be playing. We'll miss another week with a hamstring injury. Erin Phillips, they've used the term, will be given every opportunity to prove her fitness. So she probably won't play either. Just going on that sort of wording usually means won't play. But obviously I think they'll at least name her. And it sounds like Killian will be back as well. And I don't think... Oh, and of course, Ange Foley got suspended.
Yep,
so
Ange is out. Yeah. But she's only out for this game because she accepted a sanction. It was a 2, but down to 1.
Yeah, I didn't actually see the incident, but yeah.
Oh, she did it.
Okay.
She need her. She was a bit of... Daisy kind of grabbed something. She wasn't happy with a few things, so she just flashed out with a knee and was like, you shouldn't have done that, Ange.
Yes, a bit disappointing to lose a player who is probably at the sort of upper end of our team, but I guess that's life. And I think this game really does come down to where the Erin Phillips plays. We've talked about how, you really need the star power in these games, and especially us in the middle lacking a bit of that class there outside of players like Marinoff. So if she plays, might be in with a chance. If she doesn't play, I'm not giving us too much of a chance, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of with you on that. But for me, and this is what comes back to being a South Adelaide supporter, was like, okay, we might lose. So, but I'm still going to go along. I'm still going to support my team. I want to see improvement from what we had last week. I want to see them going in a little bit harder, a little bit more consistent, particularly for the newer players from like Wallace and Jones. I think they've got some really nice skills and talent, and the more they can play and actually be exposed to playing against teams like the Bulldogs, etc., is only going to improve them in the long run. We've lost the 2 games. We're sitting at the bottom. It's highly unlikely with the way the season goes. So now it's like, okay, let's see what we can do and build towards next season.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we're completely without a chance. You look at
No,
across
anything could happen.
how the Bulldogs have been playing. They have relied a little bit on their taller targets to kick their scores. Last week, Isabel Huntington kicked 2 of their 5 goals. Obviously, she's unable to play this week because of an ACL. And in the first game against Fremantle, it was I think she's captain Katie Brennan, kicked 3 goals.
Yep.
So Katie Brennan's a really fantastic player. So
She
a lot
is.
of effort will need to go into stopping her. And in the midfield as well, they have got some talent, a bit more than us, I would have thought, with players like Blackburn and Kearney. I think that's how they pronounce her name. Kearney, something like that. Monique Conti's been quite good as well. So, yeah, those sort of players that in the midfield will give us a bit of a challenge. But, again, Phillips or no Phillips will determine this, I think.
I remember when we were talking about the AFLW before last year, and I actually, for me, I said back then that I thought that Katie Brennan was a better player than Daisy Pearce. And it was such a pity she was injured, but I think she can just have a lot more impact than Daisy does, and I think she's got better quality to her disposals.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, as well as that, she has the physical size to, really harness her skills as well, being able to clunk marks and kick goals from, she's mid 170 centimeters, so key position height, but is very effective in the midfield as well. So a really dangerous player there. And I'd agree, Daisy Pearce is more of that Tom Mitchell type accumulator if you equate him to the men's team. And yeah, Katie Brennan is just an all-round excellent talent. So yeah, there's a lot of players in the Bulldogs side that, you sort of look at and you think, this player's going to be dangerous, midfield in particular. Lots of players there that could do a number on us. So it's really about, as I talked about earlier, getting the increased output from our second tier midfielders and just getting our hands on the ball a bit more. We did start to make smarter decisions at the start of the game against Melbourne, but we lost a bit of that in the second half. So continuing that smarter decision making and better structures from the first half of that match, and also improving our aerial skills and just taking marks, especially inside forward 50. That's what we're going to have to do to come close. Phillips in would be great, but apart from that, yeah, just maybe seeing how some of our younger players go.
And the one thing I've actually liked is the response from the coaching box. If something's not working, they've changed it. And they did that in the game against Brisbane, so they made a few little adjustments and everything else. They learnt from the previous week that, okay, we didn't have Phillips, so we put Randall in the midfield. But we missed the down back because we don't have Crameri. And she is such a huge loss out of that defence. And putting Randall back helped it a bit. And even then, I think there were times when, you could put Randall in the midfield, and it's like, no, we've learnt she needs to stay back there because otherwise this is going to get really ugly. So I've quite liked seeing that from our coaching staff. And, of course, we have 2 new coaches in Caven and McLeod. So that's kind of pleased a little bit. We haven't got the results out of it, but it's nice to see that they're not being stagnant. They're being proactive. They're trying some different things. And you can't really ask for much more than that in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's I've certainly seen some comments about people wanting, the coaches to pretty much change the game plan mid-game, which just isn't going to happen. And I think
you can't do that.
Yeah, and I think it's not necessarily the changing the game plan that's necessarily the issue. It's just that we're not keeping to our structures and we're not executing well enough with our skills to win these matches. The times, especially again at the start of that Melbourne game in the first quarter, when it looked like we were getting into our structures a bit better than the Brisbane game, our skills were a bit better and our decision making was better, that we were right in the game, we were applying pressure in the midfield, all that sort of stuff that you want to see, and things were going okay. But as soon as those things start to break down, as people get, all these players are very inexperienced at this level. As soon as they start to lose a little bit of confidence in their ability midway through the game, those things just start to peel away. The skills get worse, the ability to follow the game plan and structures that they've literally only been playing now for 9 games. That was their 9th game on the weekend. This will be the 10th one, I think. So, very few. No, that's not right. That last game was 10th because we played the grand final. So we played 8 last year, 2 this year. This will be the 11th. Yeah, so that's just the sort of thing you've got to understand that. And with the Melbourne side as well, a lot of those players were playing the same team in the VFLW. That would help a lot with getting used to the sort of way that these players play together. With us, again, only played 10 games as a team, so
Same coach as well.
Yeah, and across years as well. You only get a handful of games per year to sort of execute these structures, and the training and everything being part-time, it's all quite difficult. So yeah, just hoping for a bit better output, I think, this week.
Yeah, same.
There is one other injury thing that I think we missed earlier, and that is Riley Knight has gone in for ankle surgery and could miss the opening game.
So that's a little 6-weeker thing. He is a bit injury prone, is that Riley?
Yes,
but at least he's doing it at the start of the season.
Yeah, well, now is the time when all these sort of injuries come out of the woodwork and we start to see who's actually available.
Funny about that.
Yes, I think, while I like Riley Knight as a player, I wouldn't say that he's, a core need for our team. And there's a few players in the SNFL or, the rest of our squad that could, replace his role. Yeah, it would be good to see him get back, but, not like missing a Rory Sloan.
No, it was interesting. I think he's actually been training as part of the midfield rotations as well. It's where he was introduced as instead of the forward, which is what we're used to seeing him. So, and we know how he's been used in the midfield, which is actually as a tagger. Or a cooler kind of player. So that's where he's been training. To me, says that we're not averse to using that particular role a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, we also have Sam Gibson in our squad now as well, who's proven himself in many games that he's quite an effective tagger. I think Knight maybe would use him more on the wing. I mean, I'm not really sure. He was reasonably effective against Selwood the couple of times he's tagged.
Yeah, I was going to say, when do we play Geelong? Because put him on Selwood, because that's just delightful.
Yeah, it's interesting because Champion Data has said in those couple of games that Knight has been pretty much worst on field, but I thought he's done quite an effective job. So just goes to show.
This is why I don't like stats.
Yeah,
doesn't matter what he's doing. What did Selwood do?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they said he's been quite good. I mean, it's just a mess, their stats. But yeah, it would be a bit disappointing for him, I would have thought, to work all this way through the preseason and that, and cop another injury early to delay the start to his season. But there'll be lots of players who are trying to push for selection, especially in the forward line with Charlie Cameron not there. There'll be lots of opportunities for a lot of players, and hopefully we go in with a slightly different structure as well that allows us to experience or use a few more of the smaller types that we've got lying around for those sort of roles. So yeah, could open the doors for someone to really cement their spot in those opening rounds if he's not there.
Yeah, well, it'll be really interesting. Next week we'll have a chat about what the possibility is going to be for the JLT team.
Yeah, I guess that does start next week, doesn't it? Jeez.
There's footy everywhere.
Yes, of course. 3 formats now. It's like the cricket, except that one of the formats is just complete garbage. So, everyone can enjoy the AFLX on the weekend it's actually on Thursday night for watching us. For the 5 people interested. Otherwise, just, watch Netflix or something, watch the Winter Olympics. There's plenty of good TV on that doesn't involve people kicking around a stupid silver ball with neon goalposts and live music and other garbage. So, yeah, give that one a pass. Watch our women's team on Saturday because they actually are playing to win a competition that has a award. There's a grand final and a trophy and everything. That one matters, so watch that. And
which I got my hands on last week.
Yes, very jealous of seeing that cup, how those pieces of silverware. And I guess this brings us towards the end of the CrowCast for Wednesday. Phoenix says he has some music ready to go for us to be played out. So we'll catch you next week on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. We'll be back for this cast talking about news AFLW and recapping the 5 people who watched AFLX and enjoyed it.